Is there a way to nurture the next generation of global thinkers, social actors, and transformational leaders? The kind of leaders that are able to come into your organization and build your brand with local, regional, and international relevance. We at Global Capital Inc. and 10X Branded and Marketing LLC out of New York, we are particularly interested with these type of conversation. We are so interested with these kinds of content that we have been doing in-depth research over the last few years to really identify what are those talking points and peaking points that can really set the stage to nurture the next generation of global thinkers and leaders to move industries forward. We have studied the top 100 companies in the world, and we are extracting a tremendous amount of data that can be useful to businesses across the world. Today, I want us to do a high level overview of some very simple talking points. Simple, but yet can have profound impact on how the human minds develop in the organization, particularly so when it comes to truly nurturing the mindset that can move your organization and build your brand with local, regional, and international relevance. But just before I get into today's program, do permit me to introduce myself. My name is Gary Thompson. I'm a business development consultant by profession. I'm a humanitarian by nature, and I'm the self-published best-selling author for several books, including Billionaire Codes and Managers Toolkit. My most recent book is titled 10X Branded and Marketing Blueprint Business Ecosystem. And of course, gives you a number of ecosystems that will literally help to fast track your business development. A little bit about my academic background. I studied and lectured at the American University of Free Studies. I studied at Cambridge University, and I also studied at Rice University. And one of those programs that I studied at Rice University is Global Financial Markets and Instruments. Today, I will be drawing upon that body of knowledge as we go into today's program. Of course, today's program leans a little on psychology. But of course, in studying business at Cambridge University and studying, investment banking at Rice University, there's some element of psychology within these platforms. So I want to begin today's program by asking the pointed question that I started with. Is there a way to nurture the next generation of global thinkers and social actors and transformational leaders that are conditioned to build your brand with local, regional, and international relevance? From the research that we are doing, there are a number of things that we are seeing that to have this happen within your organization, it depends on the human resource. Research, and I've documented some of that in my book, it clearly states that people can never grow beyond their sense of self. It doesn't matter what you do, people cannot grow beyond their sense of self. So that brings me to talk about three important simple concepts. Simple, but profound, and they can have tremendous impact on how you organize your thoughts in relation to managing your human resources with the intention of optimizing human performance. And those three concepts that I want us to look at today is mindsets, habits, the unstoppable end product. So mindsets, habits, and the end product. Let's talk today about mindset. What exactly comes to mind when we hear about the term mindset? Now, from research in psychology, from my studies in psychology, it is very clear that mindset is the product of socialization. All right, I repeat that. Mindset is the product of socialization. Socialization nurtures a sense of self. A sense of self nurtures a sense of purpose, and a sense of purpose nurtures a sense of direction. So each of these things play on each other. Socialization gives you the end product, which we call the sense of self. The sense of self influences your sense of purpose. Your sense of purpose influences your sense of direction. But there are a few other things that are at work here that we're going to call the mindset equilibrium. From our research, what we are seeing is that when we look at this mindset equilibrium, we're seeing three distinct mindsets. One, we are seeing a rich, open mindset. Two, we are seeing a poor, closed mindset. And three, we are seeing those that takes a middle ground, a mindset that takes the middle ground, more shout-seaters. Over the next few weeks, we will examine each of them to ensure that you have a much clearer idea about what we're talking about. So we have discussed the table of content as relates to mindset. We're still to look at habits and the unstoppable you. Let's take a closer look at what is we call the mindset. I begin by saying that mindset is the product of socialization. And socialization nurtures a sense of self. Let's talk about sense of self. Since I was saying early on that people can never grow beyond their sense of self. All right. Your organization can never grow beyond the sense of self of the person who are leading your organization. As we look at sense of self, that sense of self, it's important to recognize that as we look at that sense of self, we are seeing that that sense of self can be influenced from four different strategic points. You begin to understand these strategic points of influence when we look at the self-image theory. You can have a sense of self that reflects the ideal self. You can have a sense of self that reflects the looking glass self. You can have a sense of self that reflects the self-image, and you can have the sense of self that reflects the real self. Now, to activate the next generation of global thinkers, the next generation of social actors, the next generation of transformational leaders, it is very important to connect with and flow from the real self. But guess what? There is not much conversation across the world as relates to understanding the real self. Although this is a critical subject matter when you're studying sociology, when you're studying psychology. To understand the real self is the foundation on which you're now able to re-socialize the populace into understanding that the real self is on tap, that the real self has the potential to achieve greatness. And this awareness that you want when in an organization situation, you are moving towards creating that environment that allows you to nurture the next generation of global thinkers, the next generation of social actors, and the next generation of social leaders. Now, I'm going to deviate from this a little bit and just come back to the three other cells. Traditionally, persons across the world, you're socialized directly or indirectly to understand and relate to what is known as the ideal self. And this happens very easily because when you look at media, social media, you look at Hollywood, it is very easy to see the kind of superstar that you would want to associate yourself with, you want to become. Not taken into consideration, perhaps because you're young and you have an impressionary mind, to recognize that a lot of what you're seeing playing out on the big screen is unreal. It's unreal, but largely because that information is flowing to you unfettered, unmonitored, uncensored. You tend to believe that what you are observing is real, it's realistic, it's achievable. Most of it is unreal. But yet, because you're young, you have an impressionary mind, you want to emulate what you are actually seeing. And the very act of emulating, the very fact that you're going to be impressionistic at this point, it simply means that this environment is preset to condition you to down-regulate from the real self. All right, to down-regulate from the real self. And when you start to understand the real self, you then get to recognize that all the other cells are designed to down-regulate human performance. Again, on the other hand, we have a number of persons who are, if you're not flowing from the ideal self, you're flowing from the looking glass self. This simply means that you have been socialized in a particular way, and based on that socialization, you believe that this is how you should appear, in the public space or at home. And you see this very often when you observe that persons are displaying what is called splintered personalities or mixed personality. For example, there are those who might profess to be God-fearing individuals who are going to church and observing the principles and the rules of engagement when it comes to Christianity. In church, they appear one way to their membership, and outside of the body of Christ, they project a completely different image. Why? Because in church, they are mirroring the self-image that is acceptable in that environment. All right. So you do things not largely because of your deeper sense of self, but you do things largely based on the fact that you want to appear compliant. That is one example. The other example is that this could be escalated in so many different ways. Where you try to project the public image that is not truly representative of how you feel, but you're projecting that looking glass self because you believe that this is how the public sees you. This again, it's a design to down-regulate you from your true sense of self, from the real self. And any human being that is flowing from the sense of self that is down-regulated, it is obvious that you're not going to get the optimum from them in the organization. It's harder likely that you're going to achieve this. So as a manager, if you are not fully aware of these sense of selves that are influencing human performance, this might be something for you to consider. And exactly because of this, we have developed so much of theses that can speak to these issues. We have developed the blanket workplace self-actualization thesis that looks at selective self-actualization and really giving you the tools and support to optimize human performance, to increase productivity, enhance the business cash flow, and so much more. On the other hand, you have what is known as the self-image. Again, this is socialization. And I begin by saying mindset is the product of socialization. Socialization gives you a sense of self. The sense of self gives you a sense of direction, sense of purpose. The sense of purpose gives you a sense of direction. We are now looking at your sense of self. We are looking at the process of socialization. Now, in the socialization process, you have persons that have a sense of self. That sense of self, based on the socialization, can be good or bad. That sense of self is where we talk about the mindset equilibrium. All right. Socialization can force you to have what is known as a rich, open mindset or a poor, closed mindset, or is a mindset that forces you to take a middle ground. You're uncertain. You haven't built enough repetition and knowledge relating to a particular subject matter to take a stand. So you're on the middle ground. This socialization can be a direct socialization, or it can be a socialization by default. However you look at it, again, these are all socialization that directly or indirectly causes the human being to down-regulate. Anything that is going to cause you to flow outside of the real self is going to cause you to down-regulate. Again, I'm saying this, I'm not a psychologist, but in studying business from Cambridge University and studying from Rice University, we have covered some areas of psychology. And I'm just extracting elements from those to present this. Along with this, we have done tremendous research as relates to Abraham Maslow, who is the father of humanistic psychology. So my studies in human resource development allow me to go deep into these subject matters. So we have looked at three selves. We have looked at one, the self-image theory, and you can research that. It talks about the ideal self, the looking glass self, the self-image, and the real self. Most people flow from either of these three. The ideal self, the one that you would like to be, the looking glass self, the way you think people see you, and the self-image, the way you actually are. And in this sense of self, the self-image, It could be positive, it could be negative based on socialization. My argument is that based on the fact that research is showing that people can never go beyond their sense of self, a manager who is managing a company, who is serious about nurturing the global, the social actors and the transformational leaders, the leaders that can build your brand with local, regional, and international relevance, is important to pay attention to this subject matter. So what it would take to divorce your training content from looking heavily at the ideal self, the looking glass self, the self-image, and bring it more to disseminating a content of information that allows the candidate to learn more about the real self. The real self is that self that says, I have whatever it takes to achieve my best in whatever I'm doing. We know it's not enough to just say that I have it, but the real self is that untapped potential that people have. The untapped potential that people have, and they may never be able to activate it because of socialization. Because of socialization. Socialization by intent or socialization by default. We at Global Capital Inc., 10X Branding and Marketing LLC out of New York, because we are concerned about human resource development in alignment to making them great leaders, to function in the organization, to help organization to leapfrog as global players. We have taken up an interest in this, and we are doing tremendous research. We are building tremendous thesis that speaks to these issues. In starting this program, I mentioned mindset. So we talk a lot about mindset today. It's also important to recognize that habits is another critical part of the puzzle. Because whatever you have, mindset you have based on your previous socialization, it can be corrected with habits. And I'm happy to say that. Regardless of where you came from, regardless of where you're at, understanding the power, the influence of habits, and adopting the right habits, you can correct those socialization in the majority of cases. So we have designed a very unique program that again talks about habits. And what I want to say about habits is that you rise and you fall on habits. And I want this to sink in very, very deep. You rise or you fall on habits. All right. Now, you rise and you fall on actions and inactions. All right. Actions and inactions, and taking ownership of either one of these equations that you're standing on. All right. So it's important you get this clear. People rise and will rise because of habits. People fall or remain stagnant because of habits. You adopt the right habit. That's reality. You develop the right habits, regardless of whatever forces is coming at you, and you can change those realities and those there are habits that you may need to develop. It might be some extreme, some might be tempered, tapered, some might be whatever you want to call it. But the key is for you to recognize is that you have the power to change your reality. You have control over you rising and falling based on adopting the right habits. Now, I also mentioned that you must also recognize action, inaction, and ownership. There are many persons who are socialized into thinking that someone else's action prevents you from elevating. While that might be so, in many cases, because we know that people are territorial. I mean, in my drive, and I can share some of my experiences with you, in my drive to introduce new thesis at the highest decision-making level, at university level, I was happy to interface with chancellors who would have said to me, Gary, there are people who are territorial and they're going to resist by every means possible the new thesis that you're presenting. That in itself gave me an awakening of what I'm to be faced with. But what do you think the average person should do? Accept the fact that someone else's action is going to prevent you from projecting a new vision and allow their action to prevent you from achieving that? Yes, they're territorial because they have been socialized into thinking in a particular way. And you are now presenting new information that may, unfloor that way of thinking and perhaps expose some of the weaknesses in how they have been socialized to life. So they're going to be protective of all of that. And that's quite normal. That's human nature. But what has to become normal human nature is you saying to yourself also that I will not allow their action to force me to become inactive. All right? So your inaction forces you to collapse your thesis. That is not the way great thinkers think. Sometimes you have to be disruptive, and disruptive may have to become a new social norm. All right, a new social norm. You have to get comfortable at times in becoming disruptive, particularly so when you are seeing that what established, the status quo that is there is not necessarily delivering the results that represents your way of thinking. So there is action and there is inaction. Your ability to take action represents habits. Your inability to take action also represents habits. And the important thing here is that you must take ownership for your actions and your inactions. And I'm happy to say again that we have designed a very super program that really helps you to understand the significance behind habits, how to break old habits, how to adopt new habits, how to master it, and how to become unstoppable. And I'll talk a little bit about the unstoppable move just now. But these are important concepts that any manager should want to own, know, own, and master. Your old socialization, the way you have been socialized to life, in most cases, it can be replaced with the right habits. It can be upgraded with the right habits. And it's important for you to take the time to understand habits. In our program, we bring you to the fact that, you know, you rise and fall in habits. We bring you to the fact that there is action and in action, what are habits? You have to learn how to take ownership of that. We also talk to you about what we call the 4 levels of habits. In understanding the 4 levels of habits, it really exposes you to a body of knowledge that really condition you on a pathway of building habits, the right habits. And then you bring you right over to another concept that we call 4L habits mastery. Once you learn it, you now want to master these habits. You want to master them. So we go one step further into looking at something that we call the habit systemization. And when you systemize this process, is where you bring what we call transparency, you bring consistency, you bring accountability, you bring scalability, you bring traceability, you bring transferability to this entire body. All right. So again, I continue to emphasize people can never rise or grow beyond their sense of self. And as a manager, you can bring in the best thesis to train people. The thesis may not be the fault. The mindset that you're interfacing with may be the greatest challenge. And if you don't recognize that people may be in a particular way based on socialization, they have a particular mindset because of socialization. It doesn't matter what that thesis does. You may not achieve the objective unless you make a deliberate attempt to interface with a particular mindset. You know, I can also recall while I was studying at the American University, there was the professor, the head dean. No, when I was lecturing, I passed the grad and I was lecturing. And I said to him, you know, my vision is to transform the thinking of people and is to produce great leaders in the field of marketing. You know, people that can do that research, you know, who understand the importance of research, people that can take that research data and up level it into the organization to ensure that that organization can compete and win. I want to nurture a new way of thinking. And the method that I was using perhaps gave me 20% of the results that I was looking for. So we had that conversation. And one thing he said to me, Gary, it doesn't matter what you do. If people are stuck in a particular way, you can't change them until they're ready to be changed. And that is so true. It is so true. But I do believe that as we play on the word until they're ready to change, they may never be ready for change if you leave them in their natural socialization environment or environment of socialization. they may be maybe never willing to change. What we as great leaders have to do is to build a new platform of socialization and create that exposure. And with that exposure, whoever is willing to change from old habits that are holding them back, you now give them the incentive, the support to move forward. The same principle applies to a manager. You might have people in your organization who are functioning in your organization. And the last thing that you can say when your focus is to build an institution that with local, regional, and international relevance, the last thing that you can say about your human resources is that they are not ready for change. And there's nothing that you can do to change them to be compliant with the vision of the organization. It's unacceptable as a manager to say that. It's important, however, not that it's wrong, not that the statement is wrong, the statement is right. But as a manager, you are hired to find the solutions to the problem. You are not hired to swim in the problem and throw it back at the strategic leaders and say that there's nothing that you can do about it because you will be fired. So the importance here is about you identifying how to bail out socialization environment, new environment that foster new socialization that can give you the end results that you're looking for much faster. All right? You want to accelerate that learning process, and it can be done. All right? So the last thing I want us to look at today is what we're going to call the unstoppable you. It is my genuine belief that when we are able to bring people to that point where they're able to understand a sense of self, understand a sense of purpose, understand a sense of direction, and they're really able to connect with their real self based on deprogramming, re-socialization, and you're bringing them now over to the habits, the right habits platform. You can really set the stage where you are nurturing a kind of mindset that is unstoppable. And by unstoppable, what do I mean? You're nurturing thought leaders, you're nurturing global thinkers, social actors, and transformational leaders. You're nurturing dream makers, game changers, and trendsetters. You're nurturing a mindset, all right? A team of people who are seeing where we're at as a collective, who are seeing the limitation in where we're at as a collective. And they can be taught leaders saying that these are practical steps that you need to take to move a process forward. What I'm saying is nothing new. I mean, when you talk about third industrialization, fourth industrialization, I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about. All right. They're there those who are out there, the less than 10% of those who are out there who are thinking ahead, who are seeing beyond problems, who are taking informed action to create a reality. While on the other hand, there are those who are in a comfort zone, playing it safe, unsure about self. My vision, our vision at Global Capital Inc. and 10X Brandon and Marketing LLC out of New York is to make our contribution to ensuring that we can help people to develop a healthier mindset about self, ensure that we helping persons to build the right habits, ensuring that we are providing enough information to ensure people become unstoppable in their thinking, particularly when it comes to building out business institutions, industries that can play at a global scale. And this comes back because at the moment, a developing and middle income economy, we're still not using, you know, AI, artificial intelligence, production and distribution. We're still dependent on the human resource. So in this regard, we have to place a lot of emphasis still on what it would take to nurture the next generation of global thinkers, the next generation of global, you know, social actors, the next generation of transformational leaders. We believe that our research has given us a thesis that we can share this information with you to really help you to nurture your human resources, to achieve more for themselves and achieve more for the company. I'm going to stop here today. Now, in the event that you're joining me for the first time and you find this kind of information useful, I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share so you will be the first to get this information that we will bring into you on a regular basis. Again, my name is Gary Thompson. I'm a business development consultant by profession. I'm a humanitarian by nature, and I'm the self-published best-selling author for several books, including Billionaire Codes and Manager's Toolkit. I'm also the author for 10X Branding and Marketing Blueprint Business Ecosystem. My background is that I studied and lectured at the American University of Study. I studied at Cambridge University and also at Rice University. I studied investment banking at Rice University. And one of those subject matter is titled Global Financial Markets and Instrument, among the many other programs that we have studied. Remember, at Global Capital Inc., we specialize in financial management and wealth creation. So in this program, in our institution, we specialize in looking at debt capital instrument, equity capital instrument, and credit capital instrument. We also specialize in looking at what we call smart capital access. This subject matter is not talked about a whole lot. We also look at a range of wealth management platforms. So in the event that you're the average individual and you want to achieve more financially, I want to encourage you to engage with our specialists. We have a team of economists. We have a team of certified public accountants. We are working with investment bankers. We are working with business consultants that can give you the best advice in your business and in your personal life. On the other hand, we have the 10X Branding and Marketing LLC out of New York, and that institution provides all the services you can think about in relation to building up your brand to have local, regional, and international relevance. Be blessed and see you in the next broadcast.